The immortal John Hancock here, and I thought I'd do a fun end-of-year video talking about retro review. What was your favorite retro release that came out this year? And there's lots of things, whatever you're into, that came out. I covered many of these products that I'm mentioning in this video, but some I didn't cover. There's so much that comes out, it's hard to keep up. But you know what? I am kind of a retro-focused YouTube channel, been doing this for 15 years. I'm here to just talk about what came out this year, and you determine what you think was the best retro release in 2024. That you're going to have your favorites in the comments below. Let me know. And please be respectful of other people's opinions. If they think that something else was great, let them celebrate that. And just comment, what was your favorite retro release that you picked up that you thought was an excellent product, game, hardware, software, or something else? Anyways, I'm going to list some of the things that came out this year, maybe you didn't know, and let's have fun with this discussion. So there was a lot of hardware that came out. The big release for me was the 7800 Plus, and the 7800 Plus was released this year, and it just came out, and it's just going to get better. There's going to be some future updates. There's already experimental firmware updates on Atari Age that are addressing some of the games that aren't working. It's just going to get better, but I think overall it was a better product than the 2600 Plus when it came out. It covers lots of homebrew support, and you know what? I think that wireless controller is fantastic, and being bundled in with Bentley Bears, Crystal Quest, oh my goodness, so fantastic. So then, maybe you're into more computers. The Spectrum came out from Retro Games, another excellent product, really mimicking the ZX Spectrum, and got my hands on that. Now the downside of that is that it was only released overseas, not in the US, and so a pretty fun product. You also had many offerings from Evercade on both hardware and software. So Evercade came out with the Alpha, and the Evercade Alpha is like a small arcade cabinet, and for people that want to have kind of a arcade experience but don't have a lot of room for a full cab or original cab, which is another way to go. You also had the budget releases of more Super Pocket Pros. You had the Atari edition that came out, both wood grain and standard release, as well as some others. And so Technos, a Technos edition with some Double Dragon offerings on that as well. So maybe you're more into Game Boy Color, and you had the Chromatic, which is being offered at GameStop. I did a video on that as well. That was pretty fun. Kind of a high-end Game Boy clone that you can play Game Boy Color and Game Boy games, and pretty fantastic. Came with a new version of Tetris as well, so with that first release. Maybe you're more of an Atari 8-bit computer fan. The Mini came out, and that was from Atari itself with 25 built-in games. There is a firmware update. It also has 5200 support, and you can also add your own games to that device. So it's pretty fun and fantastic way of playing classic 8-bit stuff, officially from Atari. So there was a lot of other offerings. Evercade also did updates of some of its other hardware, the Versus R and the EXP-R. Both I haven't picked up, but it's out there and people have done videos on it, so you may want to check those out. That's just a sampling of some of the hardware that came out this year. There's a lot more. I'm just kind of talking about stuff that I know, and I know there's other stuff in the comments. You can put those things. And if you like what you see, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button and clicking the bell, as I'm uploading videos every week and have done so every week this year, and looking forward to do more videos in the future. All right. There's also lots of different compilations that came out, and maybe you don't have retro consoles, and it's okay, because we live in a day and age in which there's so many different retro game compilations and offerings. Everything on Steam Deck, PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Series S, X, and more. Even on your phone. A couple notable ones that I thought were pretty good compilations. The Taito Memories 3, that was a pretty good release. There also was a Castlevania Advanced Collection These are kind of offerings. You can get them on multiple platforms. The Battlefront Classic Collection, I know a lot of people were excited about that, playing some classic Battlefront games, 2 in 1, okay? Atari also expanded on the Atari 50 and offered some DLC content to a previous release that they did in the previous year. So Atari 50 Expanded Edition, and that was also offered on physical release on PlayStation 5 and Switch, Steelbook Edition. So you also had multiple different Evercade multi-cartridges, and if you're not too familiar with Evercade lineup, it's been out several years. I did a marathon video covering the first like 50 cartridges offered on my channel. I'll put a link below to that. That was a fun video to do. But anyways, that's just a small sampling of some of the compilations that came out. Now let's get into the meat, and there's several different classic computer and console and handheld releases that came out this year. This is not a comprehensive list, but in the comments let me know. There are many aftermarket companies and people making video games for discontinued consoles that came out yesteryear, classic computers, and more. You know, even Atari themselves is fully supporting essentially the 2600, and you can pick these up. Atari Age is a long-time company that's offering aftermarket games as well. So just a list of just a few. Save Mary came out for the 2600, was a prototype and offered on physical this year from Atari. Then for the 7800, you had the big release from Atari themselves was Bounty Bob Strikes Back, which is a port from Robert De Crescenzo, and he offered that on the 7800, and Atari's offering that on a physical. I also had a port of my game Block'em Sock'em, programmed by Daryl G, and that came out in limited release at some expos this year. Pretty awesome. It's also offered on digital, on sale right now on the Atari VCS. There's several other 7800 releases that came out this year that are fantastic though, so that's not just the only thing. In television, several releases that came out, including Atari Age's first release, and as well as another version of Block'em Sock'em, which I offered and still have a few copies left of. And so just a few games to mention, but there were several other releases for Intellivision. What's crazy about Intellivision, they come out with awesome ports all the time. There's even an excellent Ghostbusters release that came out this year. Simply stunning. Let's not forget about ColecoVision. There was the EA 70s Classic, which also came out on MSX, a video that I did. But if you kind of want to go more OG and go with original arcade releases, there was a Donkey Kong Jr. port that came out. I just did a video on that on my channel. These are just a few games that came out per system, and you're in the comments list the other ones that I forgot. Anyways, this is just a small sampling. Let's talk about Sega Genesis. Sega Genesis is near and dear to my heart, and it had several homebrew releases, a few on Kickstarter. Cursed Legacy comes to mind, did a video on that, and there was a great shooter that came out, ZPF, and that was another Kickstarter release. So technically those were on Kickstarter and offered. I don't know if they've been shipped or not. All right, next you had Lynx and Jaguar. Atari Lynx had Microvaders come out, and that was a great release from Songbird Productions, and they offer a wide variety of Lynx and Jaguar releases. I know that Jaguar had a few big launches that came out this year. Jumping at Shadows, and that was a fantastic release from Reboot. One I haven't got to play the final ROM of. I need to pick that up still, but that's fantastic. Seeing the Jaguar continue to be supported after so many years. All right, let's not forget about the NES. I recently just did an amazing shooter coverage for Changeable Guardian Mystique, and that was a fantastic NES release. There also was Steel Legion, a game previous in the year, and those are both by Broke Studio. You can go to Broke Studio and they cover a wide variety of retro games. Mega Cat Studios is another big supporter of the NES. They have a fantastic website as well. Neo Geo had a few releases Vengeance Hunters, and that's on modern platforms as well. And so I'm going to include it here because it's a new game on original hardware, but they also offer a digital version of it. It's a great brawler, and I did a video on that. It was a lot of fun. Xenocrisis, I do believe, came out in Super Nintendo this year. Correct me if I'm wrong. If it came out last year, let me know. But Xenocrisis for the Super Nintendo. Can't forget about the Super Nintendo. There are homebrew releases coming out for the Super Nintendo. Not as much as the Sega Genesis, but they're there. And Xenocrisis on the Super Nintendo is pretty fantastic. Then you had weird stuff like the Nuon Ring Flyer came out, which is notable because it's the first homebrew to come out in 20 years. And then you had BioFury, I do believe, and that is a 3DO release. And that was at the start of the year, but it still came out this year. Yeah, BioFury, a Wolfenstein-inspired classic shooter, a boomer shooter, and that was pretty fantastic. So yeah, same company's working on a new release this year. I can't wait to cover it. So anyways, that's just a sampling. There's others. There's also like PlayStation D-Makes that came out in physical. I did a video on that, on Resident Evil. But those are just an example of just a small fraction of things that came out this year. In the comments, let me know. What are some other things that I didn't mention? There's things like the Polymega came out with a physical release. I don't have a Polymega, but if you do, in the comments, let me know. What do you think of it? Thank you so much for viewing this video. It's kind of a fun video to end of the year to talk about kind of the retro releases. You know, there might be some things in this video you missed and say, oh yeah, that came out. Anyways, thank you so much. Anyways, I enjoy making content and entertainment for people, and thank you very much for tuning in. If you like what you see, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button and clicking the bell, as I've been uploading videos every week. Folks are wonderful and beautiful. Let's keep it positive. This is the Immortal John Hancock, and you take care.